Afrobeat would have been more successful if the singer had collaborated with Wizkid and others. Now, check this out. He made this statement while discussing Afrobeat's, global success.
Yeah.
Speaking during his appearance on the Afropolitan podcast. He attributed the success of Latin music to strong collaborations among the likes of J Blavin, Nicky Jam, Bad Bunny, and other singers.
Yeah.
While urging Afrobeat artists to prioritize collaborations, he insisted that a joint project would increase global traction. Now, I quote him to say, Afrobeat would have been bigger if Davido, Wizkid, and the likes of others were collaborating. I might be wrong, but the probability of Afrobeat being more successful and bigger is a thing. Our genre ticket values at international shows will be stronger. End of quote. Now, this is what he had to say, about the Afrobeat genre being big, being successful, totally, globally, internationally. Now, I have a question. Thank God we have a question. We have the Afrobeats Ambassador. I know last time we spoke about Afrobeat, he said a lot of things, and we didn't have much time.
Yeah.
So hopefully today we're going to have enough time to go deeper into the next phase of this conversation this morning.
Yeah.
And the question I have, my very first question I have for the Afrobeats Ambassador this morning, Soundfreak, is the growth of Afrobeat tied to collaborations? Example, the collaborations between Wizkid and Davido. That is my first question.
Yeah, man.
The second question is, in the existence of Afrobeat, would you say that the genre has thrived through individual and personal efforts of some artists, or do you have a counter opinion?
Well, I've always said that Afrobeat, the movement especially, was a collective effort for it to become successful in the global scene. Even for it to even have a place in the Nigerian history books, it was a collective effort. We were doing this. Yesterday I mentioned, seeing Iyanya and Techno in a video done by Solid Star many years ago. There was a lot of collaborations. You look at Davido's hit song, Eve, was written, produced by Techno. In fact, there is a full-blown version of Eve done by Techno. In fact, how the song Eve by Davido came about was, basically Techno did a song, and he was done with the song, but in his head, he heard Davido. If Davido's voice could be on this, there's a high possibility that this could be a big banger. And that's a sacrifice a brother can do for a brother, right? He called up Davido. He was in the club, and Davido went to his house, recorded, the exact same words Techno already used. And guess what? That song became one of Davido's biggest songs. If you have to count Fire, Eve is really big. Right? And Fall, of course. So that's collaboration. You look at someone like Iyanya, his song, Like, that has Kiss Daniel, even Davido on top. That song was written by Kiss Daniel. You get? It's written by Kiss Daniel. But Kiss just felt, okay, if the Iyanya jumped on this, it would be nice. And that's how, they got that version of, Like. So we have been collaborating. Look at what happened between Simi and Falz. Right. It helped the culture. Look at what happened between Tiwa Savage and Wizkid. It pushed the culture forward. Collaborations and collective efforts will always bring Afrobeats forward. In fact, sometimes you even see the artists, but there are labels, there are managers that work and hard day and night to make sure that these artists become successful, but you don't even see them. Sometimes there are songwriters that are behind the scene that I've just mentioned. I don't even get to see them. So collaboration has always been a thing. Now, talking about, I believe I've answered the question, does collaboration bring Afrobeat forward? Of course it does. Talking about the big two, Davido and Wizkid collaborating. So imagine that at the lower level, at the lower tiers, people are collaborating. Local government level, imagine state, government level, people are collaborating. Now let's just imagine, looking at the tiers of government, that they were at the federal level in terms of representing Afrobeat, and they could not collaborate. So imagine that abnormality.
Abnormality, right?
That means if they collaborated, they would have done
More
for
Afrobeat.
Afrobeats and Nigerian music collectively. You know, but then, you know, I always talk about the politics of music and entertainment. They choose personal interest over a collective interest. They picked my interest. This one picked my interest. You know, at some point, this one will try to reach out. This one will not be in the mood. At some point, this one will not try to reach out. This one will not be in the mood. Because Davido has mentioned that there was a time he sat down with Davido's team. I mean, Wizkid's team.
Yeah.
They even had, you know, an idea to do a tour, but it did not work. Wizkid even announced that they're gonna go on tour.
Yeah.
You know, but they've always had personal differences that they cannot sacrifice for the collective growth of Nigerian music.
And you think these personal differences has a huge role to play on the genre?
The thing is, beef also has a way of promoting the culture, whether we like it or not.
Beef.
Yeah, beef has a way of bringing controversy. See, if you know what push Portable to away is now controversy. So in as much as I was saying collaboration is good, beef also has a way. I think in the year 2022, the very first interview I had with someone, we discussed, you know, the role of beef in the growth of Nigerian music, hip hop music, you know, and Afrobeat as a whole. It has a way of putting the culture. And if you ask me, did this beef between Wizkid and Davido push two of them forward? Yes, it did.
It did.
Davido has accepted that in many interviews that it did push them forward. But then did it collectively push Afrobeat forward? No. So the thing is, history is also about to repeat itself again in the persons of Omah Lay and Rema, which is why I'm so scared for Afrobeat. I don't want us to make the mistake of putting Afrobeat on only two shoulders or one shoulder again, like we did with Wizkid. It was only him that was basically carrying everything. Now, Rema is the only one doing it now. And the only person that's supposed to do it with him is, in terms of a man, is Omah Lay. But there is a high possibility that these two guys are beefing. There's a high possibility that there's a beef between Omah Lay and Rema. There's a high possibility that Omah Lay and Rema, they're beefing. Because there are suggestive instances. For example, Omah Lay granted an interview saying, yeah, look, man, someone stole the idea to my album, and I'm praying that that person is not Rema. And in another interview, Rema said, imagine that, you know, the gods of music gave you this idea and you could not use it on time. I'll pick it and use it. You know, and he recently, Omah Lay came out to say recently that he's the greatest of his generation. Understand? That he doesn't have proof yet, but then with time, that there will be evidence. And I replied him on X, formerly known as Twitter. This claim you are making, Shebi, you know that Rema has already made this claim. Shebi, you know that Rema has already made this claim. You know, so are you sure that you can go head to head with Rema, or you are just coming out to talk about something that will make people talk and then you drop an album? You know, so I'm really hoping that they don't get a beef. And if the two of them can collaborate, Arasta, you know, is already doing so much for Afrobeat. I hope she doesn't get tired.
I'm telling you.
Trust me to move forward. But in terms of the global imagery of Afrobeat, it has gone down the waters because the people that are supposed to represent are no longer represented.
But very quickly before we go on a break, what can the industry players, you know, you're one of the industry players, we're part of the industry players, you know, what can industry players and artists do to protect the Afrobeat genre right now from imminent extinction, because it is looking like it's gradually going down.
The thing is, we even think it is extinction, but what is coming is worse
than extinction.
What is coming? Remember what happened to the Benin Bronzes?
Okay.
Remember what happened to the Benin Bronzes?
Point made.
They were taken from their homes, and people owned it.
Oh yes.
You know, the identities were taken.
So
the Benin people were not. They didn't go extinct. Afrobeats wouldn't really go extinct like that because the word itself is so powerful.
Yeah.
It represents black power. But then, the real scare is that others are going to own this Afrobeat, and it will no longer be a property of Nigeria. So that at that point, I will now be Soundfreak, the Afrobeats Ambassador, with nothing to stand on,
with no flag,
because some people, you know, sold out Afrobeat for personal interest. If they can come together, they can make it happen. Guys like Burna Boy, they sold out Afrobeat for personal interest. Guys like Wizkid, he sold out Afrobeat for personal interest. Guys like Fireboy sold out Afrobeats for personal interest. guys like Davido sold out Afrobeat for personal interest. So where is the collective effort that we need that can push this genre forward instead of always looking at personal interest? And then we come and be blaming politicians. That many politicians are stingy. Many politicians, the only thing that they value in politics is self-interest first, you know. So where is the moral ground that you can stand to say something like this? So until back home, even on radio stations, we can collectively educate ourselves at the identity, because I dare to say that you have beloved friends of mine, presenters of myself, like myself, that they just speak from what they see on the media, and they just push that to the people, without having the time to expunge the negative from this, and take time to play the role that they have to play as a thought leader to educate the people. They just speak, and you forget that waiting person writes for magazine or paper as an opinion. That this person's opinion, and there's a huge form of bias.
Yes, an opinion be that.
The things I say, there are evidences that if you want me to pick and play,
to back the claims.
If I tell you that the video showed that Afrobeat, I have a clean evidence. If I tell you that Burna Boy did, I have clean evidence. Burna Boy did that in 2023 on an interview with one, I think Zen Lowy or something, So until we can come together and re-educate ourselves as to what is Afrobeat and Nigerian music, and then we can also go out like local industry players, go out to the global scenes, global media, and if we can have sponsors. Imagine that someone texts me from here now to a global media in London or US, and I say these things. Hey, trust me, it's gonna be an explosion.
It's gonna be an explosion.
So until we can gather together locally again, and I know that it is a collective effort, and then we push this narrative forward, trust me, we'll wake up one day. In fact, it's already happening, and we are no longer the owners of Afrobeat. Because look at one chart. Okay, I have 30 seconds. Look at one chart that we are busy celebrating right now. We call it the US Billboard Afrobeat Songs Chart. When that chart was established, I think in 2021, one thing I said on radio where I was working back then was, look, there is a clause that this chart only chart songs that are popular in the US. So that means no matter what you do in Nigeria, no matter how big you are in Nigeria, if your song doesn't cross over and is big in the US, you cannot appear in that chart. Yet that chart claims to represent Afrobeat. That is very wrong. That means at some point you have to please US or the West in order to appear in that chart. And to please them, that means you have to do what they want and not what you want. So until we can correct that clause that Afrobeat US song chart on the Billboard represents Afrobeat both in Africa and globally, we are getting it wrong.
Of course, guys, this is the only station. Of course, this is the only station I make bold to say that you can get this type of entertainment with education inside of it. So you can know, you can be up to speed with what's happening in the world of Afrobeats, in the world of Nigerian entertainment, core entertainment, right here. Of course, on the station that makes you happy, Blaze at 1.5 FM. We'll go take a break now. When we return, we have a woman crush for today.